Have you ever wondered why money can destroy the strongest relationships in a matter of minutes? Why a simple conversation about finances can turn into an all-out war between parents and children, between couples who love each other, between lifelong friends? The answer is not in money itself, but in how we have been programmed to relate to it. Over the next few minutes, we are going to explore together an ancient wisdom that Stoic philosophers use to maintain serenity even in the most difficult moments. This is not about superficial communication techniques or magic formulas. This is about something much deeper, transforming our fundamental relationship with money so that we never have to fight about it again. We live in an era where we have been convinced that abundance is just one click away. We are constantly bombarded with messages telling us we deserve more, we need more, we are less if we do not have more. But here's the cruelest paradox of our time. The more abundant society promises, the more anxious we feel about money. Have you noticed that previous generations, who had fewer options and less access to products, seem to have fewer financial conflicts in their relationships? This is no coincidence. Stoicism teaches us something revolutionary about desire. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that we are not victims of our desires, but that we have absolute power to direct them. When we apply this wisdom to money, everything changes. Most fights about money are not really about money. They are about fear, about control, about the feeling that we do not have enough power over our lives. Think about the last conflict you had about money. Was it really about those $200 your partner spent without consulting you? Or was it about the feeling that your desires and opinion did not matter? Was it about those $500 your child wanted to go out with friends? Or was it about the fear that you are losing control over their financial education? Money becomes a battlefield because it is tangible, measurable, but the real wars are happening at a much deeper level. Stoic philosophers understood that when we fight about money, we are actually fighting for something that is completely outside our control: other people's behavior. Epictetus taught us to divide the world into two simple but powerful categories: what is under our control and what is not. The money your partner spent yesterday is not under your control. What is under your control is how you respond to that situation. The money your child wants for their expenses is not under your control once you give it to them. What is under your control is the education and values you transmit before that decision. This distinction is not just philosophical. It is practical and transformative. When we begin to focus our energies solely on what we can control, fights about money become impossible. Not because we avoid conflict, but because we eliminate the main source of conflict: the illusion that we can control other people's financial decisions. But there is something even deeper here. Modern society has sold us the idea that material abundance is the solution to our relational problems. They tell us that if we had more money, our families would be happier, our partners would be more satisfied, our children would respect us more. This is the most expensive lie of our era. Material abundance, when not accompanied by wisdom and self-control, only amplifies our existing problems. Stoics knew that true abundance does not come from having more, but from wanting less. But be careful. This does not mean living in poverty or denying our legitimate needs. It means developing the ability to distinguish between what we need and what we simply want, because we have been programmed to want it. It means recovering power over our impulses before these impulses destroy our relationships. When you go to a store and see that object that seems perfect to you, before buying it, ask yourself these Stoic questions. Will this object really improve my life, or will it only satisfy a momentary impulse? Am I buying this to fill an emotional void that money cannot fill? How will I feel about this purchase in a week, in a month, in a year? These questions will not only save you money, they will save you future conflicts with the people you love. Because here's the secret that companies do not want you to know. Every impulsive purchase you make is a seed of future conflict. Every time you spend money without reflection, you are creating conditions for a future fight about finances. Not because the purchase is bad in itself, but because you are reinforcing patterns of behavior that will eventually clash with the expectations and needs of people close to you. Stoics practiced something called the discipline of desire. It was not about suppressing all desires, but about examining them carefully before acting on them. When we apply this discipline to our finances, something magical happens. We stop being reactive and become proactive. Instead of fighting about money after it had been spent, we begin to have conscious conversations about money before spending it. Imagine how your relationships would change if, instead of discussing past expenses, you could have serene conversations about future values. Instead of fighting because your partner bought something without consulting you, you could establish together the principles that will guide your financial decisions. Instead of arguing with your children about how much money they need, you could teach them to evaluate their own desires with the same Stoic wisdom. But this requires something that our instant gratification society has forgotten: patience. Stoics understood that the best decisions are made with time and reflection, not in the heat of the moment. When you feel the impulse to make a major purchase, or when you feel the need to confront someone about their spending, Stoics would tell you, stop, breathe, and ask yourself what result you really want to achieve. Do you want to be right, or do you want to have peace? Do you want to control the other person, or do you want to maintain a healthy relationship? Do you want to win an argument about money, or do you want to build a solid financial future together? These questions completely change the dynamics of any conversation about money. The illusion of abundance keeps us in a constant state of dissatisfaction. It makes us believe that we always need more to be happy, to be respected, to be loved. But Stoics discovered something that modern science has confirmed. Happiness does not increase proportionally with material wealth after covering our basic needs. What does increase proportionally with material wealth are relational problems. Because more money means more decisions to make, more temptations to resist, more opportunities for conflicts. Self-control is the invisible fortress that determines not only our financial success, but the quality of our relationships. But we need to understand what self-control really is from a Stoic perspective. It is not the ability to deprive ourselves of all pleasure or to live like monks. It is the ability to consciously choose our actions instead of being slaves to our impulses. Think about the richest people you know personally. I do not mean the millionaires you see on television, but the people in your circle who have real financial security. What do they have in common? Most of them are not the ones who earn the most, but those who best control their expenses. They are not the ones with the most glamorous jobs, but those who have developed the discipline of living below their means. They are not the ones who appear to have the most wealth, but those who have built real wealth through consistent and conscious decisions. Stoic self-control is not just resisting the temptation to spend. It is developing the mental clarity to distinguish between investments and expenses, between real needs and manufactured desires, between decisions that build your future and decisions that mortgage it. When you have this clarity, conversations about money completely change in nature. Instead of discussing whether they can afford something, they discuss whether that decision brings them closer to or further from their shared values. Instead of fighting about who has the right to spend what, they establish together priorities that reflect what really matters to their family. Instead of using money as a weapon in their conflicts, they use it as a tool to build a life they want to live together. Stoics spoke of the concept of being the captain of your own ship. In financial terms, this means that you decide where your money goes, instead of letting your impulses, social pressures, or marketing strategies decide for you. When you are truly the captain of your financial ship, you no longer need to fight with others about the course, because you have clearly established your destination. But being the captain of your ship does not mean you sail alone. The best captains know when to consult with their crew, when to ask for advice, when to make adjustments to the plan based on new information. In your relationships, this translates into proactive communication about finances, transparency about goals and concerns, genuine collaboration instead of unilateral control. Stoic self-control also manifests in how you respond when others do not have the same level of financial discipline as you. It is easy to get frustrated when your partner spends in ways you consider irresponsible, or when your children do not value money the way you think they should. Stoics teach us that this frustration is a sign that we are trying to control the uncontrollable. You cannot control other people's financial decisions, but you can control how you set boundaries, how you communicate your values, and how you respond when those boundaries are challenged. You can control whether you choose to educate or punish, whether you choose to support growth or simply criticize mistakes, whether you choose to be part of the solution or just point out the problems. The true strength of self-control is demonstrated not when everything goes according to plan, but when things get out of control. When your child makes an irresponsible purchase, when your partner makes a questionable financial decision, when you face an unexpected expense that disrupts your budget. In those moments, your Stoic self-control determines whether money becomes a source of conflict or an opportunity to strengthen your relationships. Stoics regularly practice a mental exercise called a view from above. I invite you to do this exercise now. Imagine you're seeing your life from a very high perspective, as if you were a neutral observer of your own existence. From that perspective, how do your conflicts about money look? Do they seem as important as they feel in the moment? What patterns can you observe in the way you and the people you love relate to money? This elevated perspective does not minimize the importance of money in our lives, but it helps us put it in its proper place as a tool for living well, not as the purpose of life itself. When money is in its proper place, conversations about finances become conversations about values, about dreams, about how to build together the life we all want to live. Self-control also manifests in our relationship with time. Stoics understood that the best financial decisions require a long-term perspective, but we live in a culture of immediate results. This tension is at the heart of many financial conflicts. One person wants to save for the future. The other wants to enjoy the present. One person wants to invest in education or personal growth. The other wants to enjoy the fruits of work now. Stoics did not see this tension as a problem to solve, but as a balance to maintain. Wisdom lies in finding the point where you honor both your future and your present, where you build security without completely sacrificing the joy of the current moment. This balance is different for each person and each family, but can only be found through honest and conscious conversations, not through reactive fights. When you develop true Stoic self-control, something interesting happens in your relationships. Other people begin to trust your financial judgment more, not because you are perfect, but because you are consistent. Not because you are always right, but because you always act from clear principles. Not because you control everything, but because you have control over yourself. This trust is the foundation of healthy financial conversations. When people trust that your decisions about money are guided by wisdom and not by impulse, when they trust that you consider their needs and not just yours, when they trust that you seek the common good and not just your personal benefit, then money stops being a battlefield and becomes a field of collaboration. But here comes one of the most counterintuitive teachings of Stoicism. To have true control over your financial situation, you need to let go of control over specific outcomes. This means you do your best, make the wisest decisions you can with the information you have, but accept that many factors are outside your control. The economy can go into recession. Your industry can change suddenly. Unexpected medical expenses can occur. Your safest investment can turn out to be a disaster. Stoics teach us that preparation for these scenarios should not fill us with anxiety, but give us tranquility. When you are prepared for the worst, you can enjoy the best without the constant worry that everything can fall apart. This mental and practical preparation for financial adversities is what Stoics call the premeditation of evils. It is not about being pessimistic or attracting negative energy, as some modern approaches erroneously suggest. It is about being realistic about life's possibilities and being prepared to navigate them with dignity and wisdom. What would happen if you lost your main job tomorrow? How would you and your family react? What resources would you have available? What decisions would you have to make? Stoics did not ask these questions to torment themselves, but to prepare themselves. When you know you can handle the worst possible scenario, the present becomes much less stressful. Most fights about money are born from fear. Fear of not having enough. Fear of losing what we have. Fear of not being able to maintain the lifestyle we have become accustomed to. Fear of disappointing the people we love. Stoics understood that we cannot completely eliminate these fears, but we can take away their power over us through conscious preparation. An emergency fund is not just a bank account. It is a psychological tool that allows you to make decisions from tranquility instead of panic. When you know you can cover 6 months of expenses without income, your perspective on money changes completely. You do not need to desperately cling to every dollar, because you know you have a cushion that protects you from temporary crises. But Stoic preparation goes beyond money. It also includes preparing your mind and your relationships for difficult times. How would you react if your family had to significantly reduce their expenses? Could they do it as a united team, or would they become adversaries blaming each other? The difference lies in the conversations you have today. When you are not under pressure, Stoics spoke of the importance of mentally rehearsing difficulties, not to obsess over them, but to develop confidence that you can handle anything life presents to you. When you apply this practice to family finances, you are building not only financial security, but also emotional and relational security. Diversifying your sources of income is another practical way to apply Stoic wisdom. If all your financial well-being depends on a single source, you live in a constant state of vulnerability that translates into anxiety, and anxiety is the number one enemy of healthy relationships. When you have multiple sources of income, when you have developed multiple skills, when you have multiple options, you can navigate economic changes with much more serenity. This does not mean you need to work 80 hours a week or become an obsessive entrepreneur. It means you consciously develop your ability to generate value in different ways. Maybe it is a skill you can monetize in your spare time. Maybe it is an investment that generates passive income. Maybe it is simply keeping your skills updated so you are always employable in your field. The key is that these preparations are made from a place of wisdom and tranquility, not from a place of fear and desperation. Stoics clearly distinguish between wise caution and destructive worry. Caution motivates you to take constructive actions. Worry paralyzes you with catastrophic scenarios that will probably never occur. When you and the people you love know that you are prepared to face financial difficulties, something beautiful happens in your conversations about money. They stop being dominated by fear and begin to be inspired by possibilities. Instead of discussing how to protect themselves from the worst, they can dream together about how to create the best. But Stoic preparation also includes preparing for abundance. This may sound strange, but many people are not psychologically prepared to handle more money than they have had before. Suddenly having more resources can create new types of stress, new temptations, new social pressures. Stoics teach us to maintain our values and our essential simplicity regardless of how much money we have. How would you behave if you had 10 times more money than you have now? Would you still be the same person? Would you maintain the same relationships? Would you preserve the same values? These questions are not just hypothetical, because the way you answer them reveals a lot about your current relationship with money and about the tensions that may be creating conflicts in your relationships. Stoics practice both preparation for scarcity and preparation for abundance. They understood that both extremes can be challenging for human character. Scarcity can tempt us to compromise our values for survival. Abundance can tempt us to forget our values for comfort. Wisdom lies in keeping your moral compass functioning regardless of external circumstances. This comprehensive preparation for all financial possibilities creates a solid foundation for honest conversations about money. When you have carefully thought about how you want to handle both scarcity and abundance, when you have established clear principles that will apply in any situation, when you have communicated these principles to the people you love, then specific financial decisions become much easier to make and much less prone to generating conflicts. Tranquility does not come from avoiding financial problems, because it is impossible to avoid them completely. Tranquility comes from knowing that you have the internal and external tools to handle any problem that arises. When you have this tranquility, you radiate a confidence that makes other people feel safe around you, even when they talk about potentially stressful topics like money. Stoics knew that true wealth is not measured by the amount of money you have, but by your relationship with the money you have. This distinction is revolutionary in our culture that constantly compares us with others based on material possessions. When you change your metric of wealth, you completely change the dynamics of your conversations about money. What does it really mean to be rich? For most people, being rich means having more money than they have now. But this definition is a psychological trap, because no matter how much money you have, there will always be someone who has more. No matter how comfortable your life is, there will always be a greater level of comfort you could aspire to. This infinite pursuit of more is what destroys both inner peace and relationships. Stoics define wealth very differently. For them, a rich person was someone who had enough to live according to their values without compromising their integrity. Someone who was not a slave to their material desires. Someone who could be generous with others without putting their own security at risk. This definition of wealth is achievable for most people, regardless of their specific income. When you adopt the Stoic perspective on wealth, conversations about money in your family change dramatically. instead of constantly comparing themselves with others or aspiring to unsustainable levels of spending. They can focus on what they really need to live well and be happy, instead of feeling they never have enough. They can recognize and appreciate the abundance that already exists in their lives. But this requires a fundamental change in how we measure financial success. Society teaches us to measure success by income, by possessions, by visible lifestyle. Stoics invite us to measure success by freedom, by tranquility, by the quality of our relationships, by our ability to live according to our deepest values. A person who earns $50,000 a year but lives happily and without debt, who has time for the relationships that matter, who can be generous with their community, who sleeps peacefully at night, is richer according to Stoic standards than a person who earns $500,000 a year but lives stressed, in debt, without time for what really matters, constantly worried about maintaining an unsustainable lifestyle. This perspective is not a rationalization of poverty or an excuse for mediocrity. It is a recognition that true wealth includes elements that cannot be bought with money. Peace of mind, solid relationships, time to reflect and grow, the satisfaction of living with purpose. When you include these elements in your definition of wealth, your financial goal stops being to accumulate the largest possible amount of money and becomes finding the balance that allows you to have everything you need for a full life. This shift in perspective has immediate practical implications for your finances. When you are not trying to impress others with your possessions, you can make decisions based on what you really need and value. When you are not competing in an endless race toward more and more luxury, you can find satisfaction in a standard of living that is financially sustainable. Stoics spoke of the importance of knowing when you have enough. In a culture of unlimited growth and boundless ambition, this idea may sound strange or even defeatist. But Stoics were not talking about limiting your potential or settling for less than you deserve. They were talking about developing the wisdom to recognize when the pursuit of more is interfering with your ability to enjoy and appreciate what you already have. When you know how much is enough for you, you can relax. You can stop living in the future, constantly working toward the next financial goal, and start living in the present, enjoying the fruits of your current work. You can stop seeing the people you love as obstacles to your financial goals and start seeing them as companions in creating a life that is rich in every sense. This idea of enough is not static. It can change according to your life circumstances, your responsibilities, your evolving values. The point is not to find a specific number and never change it. The point is to develop the ability to consciously evaluate how much you need to live well, instead of letting external pressures or internal impulses make that decision for you. Many successful people have discovered that true financial freedom came not when they reached a specific number in their bank account, but when they developed the ability to be happy with less than they could afford. When you can live comfortably with less than you earn, when you can enjoy simple pleasures as much as expensive pleasures, when your self-esteem does not depend on your material possessions, then you have a wealth that no one can take away from you. The psychological freedom from money is immediately reflected in your relationships. When you do not need money to validate your self-esteem, you do not need control how others spend their money to feel secure. When you are not constantly worried about having more, you can be present for the people you love. When you have found your own balance with money, you can help others find theirs without judging or pressuring them. Stoics also understood that real wealth includes the ability to contribute positively to the lives of others, not necessarily through large charitable donations, although those can be part of your contribution if your resources allow it. But yes, through the daily generosity that is possible when you do not live in constant scarcity. When you have enough of yourself, you can be generous with your time, with your attention, with small gestures that improve the lives of the people around you. You can pay for the coffee of the person behind you in line. You can help a relative who is going through a difficult time. You can support causes that matter to you. This generosity not only benefits others, it enriches you in ways that money saved in the bank never could. But Stoic generosity is not impulsive or emotional. It is conscious and sustainable. Stoics carefully evaluated how much they could give without compromising their own security or the security of the people who depended on them. They understood that true generosity requires that you first take care of your own stability, not out of selfishness, but to be able to be a reliable resource for others in the long term. This balanced perspective on generosity prevents many family conflicts about money. One person wants to help a needy relative. The other person worries about the family's financial security. Both perspectives are valid. Stoics teach us to find the point where we can be generous without being irresponsible, where we can help others without putting our own well-being at risk. Gratitude is another essential element of Stoic wealth. Not the superficial gratitude that has become trendy in some self-help circles, but the deep gratitude that comes from truly recognizing everything you already have. When you cultivate this genuine gratitude, your relationship with money is transformed. You stop focusing on what you lack and start appreciating what you have. This gratitude does not make you complacent or lazy. On the contrary, it gives you the stable emotional foundation from which you can work toward your goals without the desperation and anxiety that characterize people who always feel they do not have enough. When you work from a place of gratitude instead of scarcity, your decisions are wiser, your relationships are stronger, and your progress is more sustainable. The Stoic practice of regularly inventorying your real wealth can revolutionize your financial perspective, not just counting your money, but recognizing your health, your relationships, your skills, your experiences, your freedom, your education, your ability to contribute to the world. When you do this complete inventory regularly, it is almost impossible to feel genuinely poor, regardless of the state of your bank account. This practice of conscious gratitude has immediate effects on your conversations about money. When you speak from a place of recognized abundance instead of perceived scarcity, everything changes. Your language changes. Your energy changes. The solutions you can see change. The people who listen to you respond differently because they can feel that you are speaking from fullness and not from emptiness. Stoics also teach us about temporal wealth. Your time is the most valuable resource you have, more valuable than any amount of money, because it is the only resource that is truly limited and non-renewable. When you understand this deeply, your financial priorities automatically reorganize. You stop pursuing money in ways that rob you of time for what really matters. You stop working so much that you cannot enjoy the fruits of your work. This perspective on time as fundamental wealth resolves many common financial dilemmas. Is it worth working overtime to earn more money, if that means losing time with your family? Is it worth saving money by doing something yourself if you have to sacrifice time you could use to rest or for activities that nourish your soul? Stoics did not give universal answers to these questions, but they did give the framework for each person to answer them consciously. When you recognize your time as your most valuable wealth, you also change how you invest your emotional energy. Fights about money consume time and emotional energy that you could be investing in creating more real wealth, in strengthening your relationships, in developing your skills, in enjoying the life you have already built. Stoics were very aware of this opportunity cost of conflict. This does not mean you avoid all difficult conversations about money. It means you carefully choose which conversations are worth your time and energy, and you make sure that when you invest time in a conversation about money, it is to build something better, not just to discharge frustration or to try to control the uncontrollable. Stoic wealth also includes the wealth of options. When you have diverse skills, when you maintain your physical and mental health, when you cultivate strong relationships, when you live below your means, you have options. And having options is a form of wealth that gives you power over your life in ways that money alone cannot give. A person who depends completely on a single job, who lives at the limit of their financial possibilities, who has not developed additional skills, who does not have a strong support network, is in a vulnerable position regardless of how much money they earn at this moment. A person who has diversified their sources of security, who has developed multiple skills, who has built solid relationships, who can live comfortably with less than they earn, has a type of wealth that is much more resistant to crises. This wealth of options is reflected in how you handle conflicts about money. When you know you have options, you do not need to win every financial discussion. You can afford to be flexible, understanding, creative in finding solutions. When you feel you have no options, every conversation about money feels like a battle for survival, which makes it almost impossible to maintain the perspective and compassion necessary to resolve conflicts constructively. Stoics spoke of the importance of measuring your wealth, not only by what you have, but by what you do not need. Every artificial desire you eliminate from your life is like a permanent salary increase. Every simplicity you adopt is like a permanent reduction in your expenses. Every peace you make with having enough is like a psychological bonus that no one can take away from you. This philosophy of wealth through simplicity does not mean living in deprivation or denying all the pleasures of life. It means distinguishing between pleasures that genuinely enrich your experience and pleasures that simply drain your resources without giving you lasting satisfaction. It means consciously choosing where to invest your money to get the greatest return in terms of real well-being, not just social status or momentary gratification. When you and the people you love share the philosophy of conscious wealth, your conversations about money are completely transformed. Instead of negotiating about restrictions and limitations, they collaborate in creating a life that is rich in all the dimensions that really matter. Instead of competing for scarce resources, they work together to recognize and cultivate the abundance that already exists in their lives. But perhaps most importantly, when you change your definition of wealth, you automatically change your definition of success. Success stops being a comparison with others and becomes an evaluation of how well you are living according to your own deepest values. Success stops being an external goal that is always out of reach and becomes an internal state that you can cultivate regardless of your external circumstances. This redefinition of success eliminates one of the biggest sources of financial conflict in relationships: the pressure to meet external expectations about how they should live, what they should have, how they should spend their money. When your success is measured by your own satisfaction with the life you have built, when your wealth is evaluated by your own sense of abundance and freedom, then the opinions and expectations of others lose their power to create anxiety and conflict in your relationships. Stoics remind us that at the end of our lives, we will not be judged by how much money we accumulated, but by how we lived, how we treated the people we loved, what kind of example we gave, what legacy of values and wisdom we left. When you keep this perspective in mind, your daily financial decisions naturally align with what really matters in the long term. This long-term perspective does not make you less ambitious or less hardworking. It makes you more focused on things that really build a rich and meaningful life. It helps you distinguish between opportunities worth pursuing and distractions that only seem important because they are wrapped in the promise of more money. Now, after this journey through Stoic wisdom about money and relationships, we want to leave you with an invitation and a promise. The invitation is simple. For the next 7 days, before each conversation about money you have with someone you love, ask yourself these 3 Stoic questions. What do I really want to achieve with this conversation? Am I trying to control something that is outside my control? How can I communicate my values and needs from a place of love and wisdom instead of fear and reactivity? The promise is this: if you consistently apply these Stoic principles, if you change your relationship with money from the inside out, if you focus on developing real wealth instead of just accumulating money, you will see a profound transformation not only in your finances, but in all your most important relationships. We are not talking about superficial changes or temporary communication techniques. We are talking about a fundamental transformation in how you experience and navigate one of the most challenging areas of human life. We are talking about finding peace and purpose instead of anxiety and conflict. We are talking about building deeper connections with the people you love instead of allowing money to erode them. Stoic philosophers have given us an invaluable gift: the understanding that we have much more control over our life experience than most people believe. We do not control what happens around us, but we completely control how we respond to what happens around us. We do not control how much money we will always have, but we completely control our relationship with any amount of money we have. This internal control is the foundation of all real wealth, of all healthy relationships, of all lasting peace. When you develop this control, when you cultivate it day after day through conscious decisions and regular reflection, when you share it with the people you love through example and wise communication, you are building something much more valuable than any bank account. You are building a life where money serves your deepest values instead of controlling them. You are building relationships where conversations about money strengthen connection instead of creating division. You are building a legacy of wisdom that the people you love will be able to use long after any specific money has been spent or lost. Stoic philosophy is not just ancient theory. It is modern practice of the most real challenges we face today. In a world that constantly bombards us with messages about what we should want, what we should have, how we should live, Stoics remind us that we have the power to decide for ourselves what kind of life we want to build. We invite you to join a community of people who have decided that wisdom is more valuable than possessions, that tranquility is more important than appearance, that solid relationships are more precious than large bank accounts. Not because we despise money or because we believe poverty is virtuous, but because we understand that money is a powerful tool that must be directed by even more powerful principles. In this community, we share practical strategies for applying Stoic wisdom to modern finances. We explore together how to find a balance between healthy ambition and present gratitude. We support each other in developing the self-control that makes real financial freedom possible. And we celebrate the successes that really matter: strengthen relationships, cultivated inner peace, wisdom developed day by day. Because in the end, the most important question is not how much money you will have when you die, but how you lived while you were here. Stoics have shown us that it is possible to live with dignity, purpose, and joy, regardless of our specific financial circumstances. They have shown us that it is possible to have conversations about money that build relationships instead of destroying them. They have shown us that true wealth is available to anyone willing to cultivate the wisdom necessary to recognize and enjoy it. This ancient wisdom is your inheritance. These transformative principles are your birthright as a conscious human being. This ability to choose your response to any situation, including the most challenging financial situations, is your innate superpower that no one can take away from you. All you need now is a decision to start applying this wisdom in your real life, with the real people you love, in the real financial situations you face every day. Transformation does not occur through information. It occurs through application. It does not occur through theoretical understanding. It occurs through conscious and consistent practice. Stoics are waiting for you on the other side of your financial fears, on the other side of your conflicts about money, on the other side of your worries about having enough. They are waiting with open arms in a place where money serves life instead of dominating it, where financial conversations create intimacy instead of distance, where real wealth is measured in terms of what really matters for a well-lived life. The path is clear. The principles are proven by more than 2,000 years of successful application. The community is ready to support you. The only thing missing is your decision to take the first step. And that first step is as simple as pausing before your next conversation about money and asking yourself, how would a wise Stoic respond to this situation? What is really under my control here? How can I use this moment to strengthen my relationships instead of stressing them? With these questions as your compass, with these principles as your map, with this community as your support, you are ready to transform not only your finances, but your entire experience of what it means to live a rich, full, and connected life with the people who matter most to you.
Remember, practicing Stoicism is a daily journey toward inner peace and resilience. If this video has inspired you to reflect or helped you see things from a different perspective, I'd love to read your thoughts in the comments. Which idea resonated with you the most? How do you apply Stoic discipline in your life? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content. Together, we will continue exploring the wisdom of the great Stoics and discovering how to apply it to our modern lives. Thank you for being part of this community. See you in the next video. Keep cultivating strength with every step and share your journey with us.